Should be live now. Welcome back to another edition of the Auburn Undercover podcast. Christian Clemente here, joined by Jason Caldwell and Philip Dukes. Guys, I'm not going to really waste any time introing or anything because we have a lot to talk about, and we're going to try and do it in about 30 minutes or so. And that doesn't do it justice for the amount of recruits that were on campus this weekend. Had 6 official visitors, had a lot of unofficial visitors. Don't know the total number, but there were a lot of them, and all of them were dudes. And the fact that Auburn was recruiting them pretty much all. And so there's a ton of them. We're going to try and go for 30 minutes. Guys, if you have questions, ask them in the chat below, and we'll try and get to all of those questions. I think we'll just get started talking about some players, and then as questions kind of accumulate, we'll go and hit those. Dukes, I think I want to start with you with KJ Bolden. That's the one that everyone's going to want to know about. The 5-star Florida State safety commit. He ends up taking his official visit as he had previously planned before committing. Comes in for the weekend, and by all accounts, it went pretty well. And he says he looks at Auburn a little bit different. Was kind of his quote after the official visit and after the showing they had after nearly upsetting Georgia. But just after the weekend, what's your kind of takeaway on a little bit of an uphill battle with KJ Bolden? But what's your takeaway there?
I think it's definitely an uphill battle, but Auburn did everything they could do but win. When you think about what the expectation was for a game where the point spread was so vast, and basically a lot of people thought that Georgia was going to walk in and run over Auburn, and you can kind of see the spirit of Auburn propelled the football team a lot further than a lot of people thought it would go. You look at the Auburn's inability to pass the ball, but still be in a game of that magnitude against the back-to-back defending national champions, and a 5-star player who feels that they can be a foundational player. There's nothing for Auburn to hold their head about when it comes to the way they performed, and I think KJ Bolden picked up on that. Overheard him talking. I think Jason wasn't far away. Overheard him talking about how cool it would be to see Auburn win. He actually was talking to 5-star 25 Alabama commit Ryan Williams and Jalen Crawford. And I was in earshot. I had just spoken to all 3 of them. Antonio White was there too, and he was just saying how cool it would be if Auburn won. He was like, man, I kind of want to see Auburn win this game. And I thought that spoke volumes for somebody who's been around Georgia a million times, visited that campus a bunch, really get caught up in the Auburn spirit to the point where he would have liked to see probably somebody rush the field and see how Auburn would have, celebrated. And I think that the fans, the way he was treated, the autograph signings, all of that coming from a school that he's not even committed to really had a major impact on him. Do I think he's close to flipping? Not at all. Do I think that it's an uphill battle? Yes. Do I think that Auburn is doing everything they can to stay in his recruitment? They absolutely are. And let Auburn pull off a couple of more wins. You'll get another crack at recruiting them at the Iron Bowl. Let's say Auburn comes out on top of the Iron Bowl, and I think you have some serious consideration for KJ Bolden.
Yeah, Dukes, I think you hit the nail on the head, and it's something that we've kind of talked about ad nauseum on the board. But in terms of recruiting, obviously these recruits, they wanted to see a win, they wanted to rush the field, do all that. But this is as close as you could get to having a win, at least in terms of recruiting, because all these guys are saying, hey, they're a player away. We'll talk about Ryan Williams a little bit later, and I'm glad you brought him up. But Ryan Williams is saying they just need a couple of playmakers, and they upset number 1 Georgia. And the coaches are like, well, yeah, Ryan, you're that playmaker. We need you. We need you out there catching passes. And for KJ Bolden, the thing that I asked him after his official visit, I said, what does it mean for you? Kayan Lee is obviously a guy that he's close with. Kayan Lee has played a lot as a freshman. Jalen Simpson is now tied for the most interceptions of all of college football at the free safety spot where Auburn's recruiting KJ. I'm like, what does that mean to you? Is that important when you look at Auburn? And he said, definitely. He likes Ron Roberts' defense, that playmaking defense, he called it. And he thinks that he could potentially step in and be an immediate impact guy right there at free safety, because Jalen Simpson's played his way into the NFL and probably played his way into a pretty solid draft pick compared to where guys thought he may not even get drafted. So KJ is one to keep watching. Dukes, like you said, he'll be back for the Iron Bowl. Pretty much everybody's going to be back for the Iron Bowl, but important to still get him on campus. You take as many chances as you get. Jason, I want to pitch it to you. for one of the other big official visitors, Jeremiah Beeman, the Alabama defensive line commit. He's been on campus quite a bit, back this weekend for his official visit.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We've seen a bunch of Jeremiah Beeman in the last 12 months or so. The guy that the previous staff recruited, but obviously it's ramped up a lot with this staff, and I think especially now in maybe the last few months, Jeremy Garrett, Hugh Freeze, those guys. Freeze was just in his school this week. Now that coaches can back be on the road and this bye week, but Beeman visited, entire family visited. Obviously committed to Alabama. He's also visited Colorado. This is one that I think you look at it and does Auburn have a lot of work to do? Yeah, they do. But they also have told him, look, here's the plan. We need this specific type of guy, and you're that guy. Because we can see Keldrick Falk. Keldrick Falk is going to be a guy that's going to weigh 295 or 300 pounds before he's done by this time next year. He's probably going to be an interior defensive lineman that can rush the passer, do some of those things. Jeremiah Beeman is a guy that's a big pass rushing defensive end. And, this is one of the guys that you look at in this class going, man, this could be a big difference maker for them. Probably going to be tough to pull this one out of a kid from Birmingham right there at Alabama. But Saturday was a huge step in the right direction. I mean, we're going to say that over and over again with everybody we talk about because like Dukes and Christian just said, but when you start talking about the impact of a day like Saturday, it's really funny. And I've been thinking about it for 3 days now. From a program standpoint, absolutely winning that game was the best thing that could ever happen to you. From a recruiting standpoint, I don't know that it could have gone much better than you did Saturday because like you guys just said, you did push Georgia to the limit, and then you can turn around in the locker room and go, look what we need. We need you, and you. That's what we need to make this thing a reality. Obviously, winning the game, you do that anyway. But now you can go, look, this guy's what we needed. We needed playmakers. We need the guys that can rush the passer. Here's what we need, and we're missing. And that's what you got to find. We've been talking about it all year. The kids knew it, but it showed up on Saturday that look what they're doing, and they still don't have those pieces. So I think it was a huge recruiting coup for kids to believe in the staff. They could see it. And we've heard it the last 2 years. Say all the right things all you want to, but if you don't show it on the field, then guys go, oh, well, it's just talk. Saturday showed it on the field. They showed, look, we can get this done if we have the right guys. That's a huge thing for recruiting, and I think it's going to show up this year and down the road.
Yeah, Jason, that actually reminds me of another KJ Bolden quote, not to go back to him again, but he said that he was really impressed by what they were able to do keeping up with Georgia, and the thing he specifically mentioned was these aren't even their guys. He said, these are a bunch of portal guys, and the back half of the 23 class for Hugh Freeze, and I think his exact quote was, once he gets his guys, it's going to get real scary down here. So these guys are taking notice. They see the vision a little bit. I think let's do the other official visitor in terms of non-commits. Walker White, DJ Barber, and Joe Phillips were all also there. All three are already committed. All three actually had really good things to say. So definitely make sure to head on over to auburnundercover.com. If you haven't read those stories, you can still find them over there. They were really good. But then the other guy was Favor Edwin, the Eagles Landing Christian Academy offensive tackle, who is absolutely massive. A picture does not do it justice.
It does not.
Listing him at, I think, 6'8", 290 on his 24/7 Sports profile, I don't think also does it justice, to be honest. I mean, he is a massive human being. He's exactly what you're looking for when you're looking for an offensive tackle in terms of frame. And he came over from Nigeria, came over and really started playing basketball. Jason, the thing that's interesting was one of the guys that really got him playing football was Colton Hood.
Yeah, I talked to Colton. He was there as part of Favor's visit, and I talked to Colton on Sunday, and he's like, yeah, like I'm the one that talked him into coming out and playing football. He was a basketball guy, and I'm like, dude, you need to be coming and playing football. And he's gained weight. He's gotten bigger. This is the exact path that Prince Tega, Wannago Jr., followed. The exact path. The guy that came here to be a basketball guy. Football coach said, you can play basketball if you want to, but your future's in football. You move to football. you're going to be raw, but the athleticism, strength, power, and work ethic show up already. And this is one of those guys that you look at, and I mean, because of the connections, because of having Colton here, and well, he fell in love with it. I mean, just listening to him talk about his visit and saying, "Look, hey, I want to try to get back to every home game." This is one that you look at now, going, I think Auburn is in pretty good shape, and I mean, we all know Colton Hood. Colton Hood is a great kid, and he said, "Hey, I can trust that guy." So that you start thinking about relationships, and it's coaching relationships are important. The man-player relationships are maybe more important when you have bonds with kids, with recruits come together. You know, we talked about Walker White and all these guys. This is a class that has a strong bond already, and kids are kind of joining in it. But you also have guys that have bonds with the players already on the team. And this is one of those guys. I think it could pay off for Auburn. Like Kirsten, you said, hey, you're close to putting in a crystal ball.
I did earlier today.
Yeah, so there you go. I think it's right there. I think Auburn has put itself in great position for this guy that, man, has a ton of upside on the offensive line.
Yeah, not an immediate impact guy, but for Auburn, you know, we saw it last year with the 23 class. You've got to start layering the depth chart.
Correct.
That's what this staff is doing. You've got to get your transfers. They're going to have to do that again because some of these guys are going to be gone. We knew that they were one-year guys, rentals, in a sense. And so you got to layer the depth chart, and you can't get a much better piece of clay to mold there on the offensive line at tackle than favor Edwin. Now we've already got some questions, so we'll just hit those. David actually says, as long as Dukes doesn't interview them again, we have a chance. Well, David, unfortunately for you, we're scheduling the favor Edwin interview earlier today. Getting Alvin Henderson as well, Laquin Robinson. We're going to get all those guys, make sure Dukes touches on all of them, does all those video interviews. Just kidding. We don't have any of those set, but we do have some of them that we're going to try and do. And Dukes is going to talk with them, and eventually one of them is going to commit to Auburn. And that's going to be a victorious day on the board.
Well, the funny part is I was favor Edwin's first interview. So sorry.
Oh, man. Okay, some questions here. Cole, which commits committed elsewhere did Auburn make the most ground with? That's a great question, and there are a ton of good answers.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many of those guys that were on campus. You know, I mean, obviously there's two of them right there, teammates at Saraland. When you think about KJ Lacy and Ryan Williams, both 25 guys that have been to Auburn a bunch. Those guys hung around and stayed until Sunday and visited. I was going with Caleb Odum because Caleb Odum is a guy that has grown up kind of following Auburn. He's from Carrollton, Georgia, which is, as the crow flies, it's pretty close to Auburn, just across the line. You look at the tight end spot, that's a playmaker position in this offense. You've seen some from Rivaldo Fairweather. Caleb Odum, I think, you know, can Auburn make the another grab from Alabama for a playmaking big wide receiver / tight end? It won't shock me if that happens, especially if they get it back on campus again. I know he's going to Ole Miss this weekend. He said, "Hey, it's Ole Miss and Auburn that have a chance against Alabama. Auburn's got a chance to play both those teams here down the road. And if they can just continue to show what they did, that's a guy that could have as much impact on the class as anybody in terms of when you're talking about going to get a guy that can go get the ball anywhere on the field. You pair him up with this wide receiver group you got, and if you were to pull a Nik Carr or Cam Coleman as well, I mean, if you're Auburn, you say, hey, shut the door. You get Ryan Williams too. I mean, shut the door and be over with. You're like, hey, that's that. You can't do anything else if you're Auburn to get more playmakers, and so that'd be a guy that I would want to.
Dukes, I'll go ahead unless you have one ready because I think I've got a pick that I feel pretty good about. And it was the guys that we showed, Ryan Williams and KJ Lacy. I think neither of those guys, they both visited last year. Neither had a good experience. Ryan came up for the Penn State game, and it's pretty well known now that the only person that really talked to him was Jason Caldwell. And so, I was talking to him pregame, and I said, hey, anybody talk to you yet? He said, everybody's talked to me. And he reiterated that after the game, had a meeting with Hugh Freeze. Look, there's a reason he's Auburn's #1 wide receiver target in 2025. And there's a reason he's committed to Alabama, and there's a reason every other school likes him at wide receiver. He has all the makings to be a generational talent at wide receiver. And I think Auburn definitely made up some ground. It was huge to get him back on campus. Huge for him to stay the next day as well and spend more time on campus on Sunday, get even more alone time with the coaches. Because, the coaches, he said everybody talked to him, but those meetings, they have to be quick. You got to kind of boom, boom, boom. You got to talk to a lot of guys when it's a Georgia weekend like that. But to spend even more time on Sunday is notable. And the same goes for Texas quarterback commit KJ Lacy. The game he visited for last year was the Arkansas game. He arrived at halftime. By that point, Auburn was already getting blown out. Brian Harsin was fired 2 days after that game. So he never really got a true Auburn game experience. So I think Auburn made up a decent bit of ground with both of those guys in the 25 class. Dukes, is there anyone that sticks out? I know we just took a couple good ones, but there's a ton of other committed guys that were there.
One committed guy that was there, he's a little bit further down the line, but I think Juju Lewis, who was a surprise visitor to a lot of people. Him showing up in Auburn, he didn't have a whole lot to say on campus, but for what I'm hearing, just the atmosphere was something that he wasn't expecting. He's currently committed to Southern Cal. Also flirting heavily with Georgia as well. But I think Auburn did a lot to kind of get on his radar. And I think that right now, like in the state of Georgia, what we call the wave, like Auburn has a wave right now, even wanting to be something different than what everybody else is doing. So, and you can see that even with him committing to Southern Cal as a sophomore, and there's a lot of rumors about him reclassifying, but especially with the Georgia NIL rule changing recently, there's less of an incentive for him to move out to California. So with him staying close to home, like you said, going to the same school as Caleb Odum at Carrollton, Auburn being as close as it is, which is probably closer to Carrollton than Georgia is. I think Auburn did a lot to impress Juju Lewis, who is committed to Southern Cal.
Okay, that's an interesting one. Didn't see that one coming, but that's an interesting one. Seachild, McFellow's Bolton's teammate, the linebacker Jaden Perlotti, is he a legitimate target for Auburn or not? Yes, absolutely is. He was on campus on Saturday again after returning. Last time he was on campus was Big Cat weekend.
Yep.
So yes, he is a target. This is an interesting one from James. Did the outcome of this game possibly cause us to get more players on the offense, the defense, or both? I would say offense because there's a pretty clear need there in several different spots, but you can make a case for different positions. I mean, we heard it. LJ McRae was saying they're a defensive lineman or two away from changing the game. Jamonte Waller talked with him just a little bit, really briefly. He didn't want to do an interview, but he's like, they just need a couple more playmakers. So you can make a case for either side of the ball. I would just say offense because I think you could sell receiver need pretty immediately, and we were just talking about Ryan Williams, but there's a case for both sides, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think both sides show it. I mean, defensively, you're going to rotate guys up front, you're going to roll guys, and they still don't have that one true pass rusher. They've been kind of doing it with smoke and mirrors. Ron Roberts has done a great job to squeeze everything out of this defense right now, but they're not. We saw it Saturday, and it showed up late in the game. You can't blitz every play, and then when you don't blitz and you don't get pressure, and Brock Bowers on the other end of things, that there's not much you can do. And so, still looking for those guys to be. You're right. Playmakers is the key. That's what we talked about all year long. Jalen Simpson is the absolute playmaker on the back end of this thing, but they still haven't found the guy up front. Marcus Harris is good Saturday, but can you find some of those guys to push the pocket and create some of those plays, rushing the passer? So yeah, I think defense shows up. Offense obvious. I mean, you look at outside at wide receiver, offensive line. The need is showing up pretty quickly.
Dukes, take for you on that one.
Yeah, I think what kind of showed up the most was that a position that you already have solidified, which is quarterback for the next class. A lot of people said you've got two, you've only got one. So I think seeing the need at quarterback was something to go back to my other point, where if you have that guy at quarterback, you probably win that game, to be honest. Not to take anything away from, because I think Robbie played well and I think Peyton Thorne played well as well, but just not having that aerial aspect with the type of playmakers that you do have. Like, let's say you do get Ryan Williams and Caleb Odum and Cam Coleman and Perry Thompson. You get all of these guys. If you don't have the right trigger, man, it's all for naught. So I think that showcasing that, having the right guy in the future could mean a lot to the program. And I think a lot of people took notice.
Yeah. David did follow up Dukes, and he said he loves the content. He loves you. Just feels a little bit cursed. But we got one more question here. And guys, if you have questions, we're still going to go for another 10 minutes or so. So we dropped some questions. Where do y'all think Auburn will finish this upcoming year in recruiting ranks? Top 5, top 10? I do not think top 5 is feasible. Right now, Auburn's sitting at 14th, I believe, in the 24/7 Sports team recruiting rankings. I think Auburn can get anywhere from, I'll say 7 to 12. And I think Auburn will crack the top 10. It might be 9 or 10. But I think they'll crack that top 10. And I think that's a pretty big win in my book for really the first recruiting class of the Hugh Freeze era.
Yeah, I think to get to a 5 would mean everything falling into place. It would mean LJ McCray. It would mean Cam Coleman flipping. It would mean KJ Bolton. It would mean Jeremiah Beeman. You would have to get all those guys, and they're still out there, but you don't expect to go 100%. That's kind of what it would probably take to get to 5. I agree. I think probably 7 to 10, somewhere around in there would be my opinion.
Yeah, I'd go. I think they'll have a top 8 class. Just seeing how the coaching staff has been really, really after missing out on some earlier commitments, the way they've been diligent about steady recruiting the guys that they wanted instead of just taking guys who may not have been as high on the board. I think it shows that the confidence that the staff has, as well as the feedback that they are getting from players. So I think that the way this class is setting up, when you look at the average per player, I think as the class fills out, if they stay with that average, there's no way they'll be below 8.
Here's a good one. This is a name that I keep hearing about, this Smith kid. That's Derek Smith from Selma. Is he as good as people are saying? Jason, you've seen him play at Southside Selma. Raw football player a little bit, but a very good football player.
Yeah, I actually seen him played football and basketball. So I've seen him in multiple sports. That's the thing about him. He's a guy that is a little bit bigger, but it's going to be a Courtney Taylor thing, in my opinion. I think he's that kind of athlete. Courtney was a guy that, coming out of Carrollton, was a guy that came in with a really heralded class, and he was a little bit behind Ben Obamanu, Devin Aromashadu, and those guys early on because, he had played every position. He was a basketball guy. He had not focused really on football stuff. I think Derek Smith is the same kind of guy. I think Auburn's right there for him. But this is a guy that I'm telling you is a legitimate roaming free safety too. I think as a sophomore, he had like 13 interceptions last season. So this guy could play either side of the ball. I think probably wide receiver is where he'll wind up, but he's a big physical kid. As a brother that's a 6'6" wide receiver, forward too on the basketball team, and pretty fun to watch. And so we'll get a chance to check him out, even if it's not football season this year. Probably back on the basketball court at some point this fall. But Auburn's made a strong push for him, and Marcus Davis that's one of the guys he really likes in next year's class.
Yeah, and he was back on campus for the game. Man, a few words, didn't say a whole lot, but if you were there actually listening to what he was saying and watching his facial expressions, I guess you could say he was definitely showing his interest in Auburn. Let's hit on 2 safeties here real quick. Duke's Zaquan Patterson, the Miami commit, ends up making the trip back up. This is a kid who, despite being from the South Florida area, grew up with Auburn people kind of in and around his circle a little bit. So he's been coming to Auburn games for a while. He's always been interested in Auburn, always been following them. I think one of the things that was interesting to me was he said, I've been to a bunch of games here before, but the one he said, I was really fired up for this one. Just something about it. I was really excited for it. And he's like, look, they lost to the last second, but I can't even be mad about that. That was a really fun game. I think this is similar to KJ Bolton. There's still work to be done. I would still call it uphill, but to get him back on campus for an unofficial visit, and still have that official visit saved for sometime later this season certainly doesn't hurt. I mean, Duke's just kind of, what's your thoughts? And the other thing I do want to add on him too was, he's saying, look, Auburn couldn't really stop Brock Bowers at all. That's where I'd feel comfortable playing in this defense. And so that was interesting to me that he saw a fit pretty easily in this defense.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going. Looking at how Brock Bowers performed, even in bracket, a lot was made about saying, "Oh, well, they didn't bracket it." Yeah, they did bracket the coverage, but it was a half side top safety, not directly double team, which would have left everybody else man to man. So having a guy who could have more of an impact in a one-on-one type setting is something that I heard Patterson was really interested in. And the DBs love Ron Roberts' defense because it's really predicated upon the success of the secondary. He sends a lot of perimeter blitzes. They do a lot of things funky at the star. If you play, you can play the field, the boundary, or the star safety, and you can actually be interchangeable if you can handle it. He's one of those guys who feels like he's just as strong in run support as he is in pass coverage. So I think the showcasing of Ron Roberts' defense where he could fit had a major impact on him. Now, as far as being an uphill battle, I still think it is. I think if you get him back to OV at the Bama game, things go favorably. It's right before signing day, closer to signing day. I think that it's somebody that I believe he will return for that game, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure if it's confirmed yet, but that's what I was hearing. And I think it's somebody you have a legitimate shot with. I don't think you have any of those thumpers like him in the secondary right now committed. So, I think Kinsley Faustin is a pretty decent hitter, but he's a little faster, athletic. But I think this guy, I wouldn't say faster, but definitely more of a coverage guy than Patterson is. Yeah, rangy. There we go. But yeah, outside of that, I think Patterson has a really decent shot at ending up in the class. I say decent, not. I don't feel like it's imminent, and I do feel like Miami has a big game against Georgia Tech this weekend, and I think I believe he's visiting if I'm not mistaken. So they'll do everything they can to try to make sure that he forgets about his Auburn experience. So getting them back on campus will be huge.
Yeah, I want to hit on another safety, another thumper there at safety. Jason Laquin Robinson, you had the chance to talk with him after the game. JUCO safety. And the more I was starting to think about the secondary of the future, the more Auburn needs a lot of guys next year, and they need some guys that can immediately help because Jalen Simpson has played his way into the draft. Zion Puckett is running out of eligibility if he's not already out after this year. I don't know exactly. DJ James and Nehemiah Pritchett probably gone after this year. Keontae Scott could head to the NFL. Donovan Kaufman's getting older. Your entire starting secondary really is going to be gone. Now you have young guys that you brought in this last class that you like. Kayan Lee has already played. Terrence Love has gotten in the mix a little bit. Sylvester Smith has, but you're going to need some guys that can help contribute right away, and Laquin Robinson could be one of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the safety spot, and this is a guy that you're right. You got some younger guys that are playing and that have played, but bringing in an experienced guy that can maturity level and bigger body guy is a guy that can really step in and play and do some things. And so Laquin Robinson, a kid from Greenville, saw him play in high school, is a mature guy, grew up in a family full of Auburn fans. They made him a priority. Going to come back for an official visit for the Iron Bowl. I'll be very shocked if he doesn't wind up a part of this class if Auburn wants him. I think if they push for him, I believe he'll be part of this group when it's all said and done. And, again, 6'1", 6'2", 210 pounds, a little bit bigger body guy. It's always a guy that had the athleticism. And I think going to junior college helped him hone in those skills and do some of those things. And so, I think that's a guy that absolutely should be on everyone's radar for the next couple of months.
Two guys that I had that we didn't really talk about that much, we'll touch on really quickly. Khalil House, the Stanford offensive line commit, makes it back to campus. He said that he'd probably be back for a couple more games this fall. Auburn's still chipping away. I'd be surprised still if he doesn't end up in Auburn's class, to be honest. I just think going from Houston County, Georgia, all the way up to Stanford, the closer you get to that and actually signing with Stanford, the more you realize how tough it is just to go home for a weekend or something like that.
We just found that out a few weeks ago. It is a long way from Auburn, Alabama to Palo Alto, California.
Yes.
And so you make that trip. There's not buzzing home for the weekend to get some home cooking. That's not happening. So really athletic kid. This is a guy that I think if Auburn could get him into class, it'd be huge.
Other one is Nik Carr, that we should touch on, the former Georgia wide receiver commit. He backed off his pledge last week, and then the first place he visited was Auburn. I think Miami's in the forefront of this recruitment a little bit, and he'll be in Miami this weekend, Penn State next weekend. But Auburn's really in the mix, and they've been working this one hard. He was on campus for Big Cat Weekend, even when he was a Georgia commit. And he said he plans to be back for an official visit. So we'll see how this one develops. But it was definitely noteworthy that he was on campus. We'll touch on this real quick. Adam said, not sure if you're taking basketball questions, but we'll answer whatever. So we had a scrimmage earlier this week. Did you guys get to attend? No, we didn't get to watch it. But Bruce Pearl did talk about it a little bit. I think he said that they shot the ball really well, but then he's like, well, we're playing against each other. So don't know what that really speaks about our defense. Gotten to watch practice a little bit. This is definitely a much improved shooting team. The biggest key now will just be how does the defense kind of show up. What we can talk about with basketball real quick, Jason, was 2 big-time 2025 visitors. 5-star guard Jalen Harrelson from La Lumiere, and then the kid that you talked to from Texas, whose name I honestly don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah. I mean,
Jeremiah Green, maybe.
Jeremiah Green, yep. 6'3" point guard from Texas, Denton, Texas. Both guys really enjoyed it, and this is 2 big time prospects. They also had 5-star unofficial visitor on campus, a couple other visitors. It's a big weekend for basketball as well, and it was an important weekend for recruiting because these basketball kids can take multiple official visits this year, and then they can turn around and take them again next year. So this is a good opportunity to get that first one in. And okay, I really enjoyed that. I'm gonna come back again, and a lot of these guys now will make a decision before their senior year starts. So you can get the people that are visiting now, you could get another official visit in next June and have a guy make a decision pretty quickly. So all those visits went well. And the scrimmage was the morning of the Georgia game. So it was a little tough for us to try to make that one, but watched them practice a couple of times. This team's going to be able to shoot the basketball. They're going to be able to do some things. Aiden Holloway is fantastic. The 5-star freshman point guard. I think him and Trey Donaldson will be really good together at the point position. Denver Jones at 2 guard is a guy that can shoot it, can do some things. I think it's a really interesting team. They're longer, but obviously you don't have the ball hawking guys, at least right now, on the backcourt that are defender guys. I could see this team actually doing a little bit more kind of zone things, zone press, do some things like that with that length. But it's going to be more shoot and try to get up and down a little bit more, I believe.
Honestly, the biggest highlight of the weekend for basketball was former Milwaukee Bucks head coach Mike Budenholzer was on campus this weekend. And as a Bucks fan, that was awesome. Got to meet him real quick at practice and then saw him again at the game on Saturday, and geeked out a little bit and asked if I could get a picture with him, but really nice guy. And his son is looking at coming to Auburn just as a student. So he got to go to basketball practice and got to go to the game and everything, but just really cool to see him. Fellas, I think we'll probably wrap it up there, a little over 30 minutes. Just any parting thoughts or any things that I missed? Dukes, Jason, I feel like we've touched on some of the major ones. There's still so many names that we could talk about. There were so many guys that were on campus, and it went well with really all of them. So we could be here all night, but I think we've.
Yeah, I think it was just the overall atmosphere. I mean, it was incredible atmosphere. Kids stayed engaged from beginning to end.
You kept every recruit in their seat until the clock hit 0.
That's it, and that was a big part of things. They got to see the fans engaged, and you hear kids talk about all the time about atmosphere. They saw as good an atmosphere as you're going to find. I mean, you might have one that equals Saturday. I don't care where you go. You're not going to have one that's any better than Saturday was. And so these kids leave there going, and that was special. That was a special time. And, again, I said, you're talking about it's all about planting seeds. Whatever you do, it's about planting seeds and recruiting. relationships, whatever it is. That was another day of planting seeds for the staff and the program, and we'll see some fruit from that down the road.
Dukes, any final thoughts?
Just double up on basketball. I think Jason got a chance to speak with him as well. There was a 26 small forward, Jalen Wingfield, who visited with Tavares Dice. Right now, he's below the radar, like a lot of the prep hoops report, who's really big in Georgia, just named him the #1 player in the 26 class. He absolutely gave it to everybody right ahead of him this summer on the circuit. So talking to guys in the rankings department, they feel like he'll be a high 4-star. Came, visited, got a chance to check in with some of the basketball coaches, and he'll be returning for an unofficial visit to another game this year. So just a name to look out for.
And do you see that's a guy that has some strong bloodlines too, right?
Right. Yeah, his dad, D'Antonio Wingfield, was South Georgia. What did he play, Jason?
He was from Albany.
Yeah, Auburn.
And that's a guy that, when you mentioned the name, I've been like, boom, okay. D'Antonio Wingfield was a big-time player. He's still probably one of the top 10 players to ever play in the state of Georgia, coming out of high school. So that's pretty good when you start thinking about the next in those lines. Auburn's had pretty good success with sons of successful dads coming through the program, and who knows, maybe that'll be another one down the road.
Yep, absolutely.
Perfect. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. I'd love to keep going. I'd love to talk about Tavares Dice. Auburn's made a pretty big move there with that 2025 offensive tackle. But we'll wrap it up there. Let's get more consistent with this. That's on me. We've just been slacking on the recruiting podcast a little bit, but we'll definitely do that. I love doing them live. I love to interact with the chat. I know we kind of decided to do that last second, so didn't get as many people in. But honestly, when y'all are asking us questions, that's the best, because you're the ones that listening. You're the ones that we care about. So we want to answer what you want to hear about. So we'll definitely try and get a little bit more consistent with this. If you're watching on YouTube and you have not subscribed already, definitely make sure to do that. It doesn't cost you anything. We're on the push for 10,000. I'll say that. I think we're above 8,200 or something like that. So we're making the surge for 10K. So let's try and get that maybe by the end of the year, something like that. That'd be a big stretch, but we'll see. If you're not over at auburnundercover.com, if you're just on YouTube or Apple, Spotify, wherever you're listening to this as a podcast, go check us out at auburnundercover.com. Running a special right now. You can join for $1 for the first 2 months, or you can get, I think it's 30% off an annual sub. So definitely make sure to check us out over there. Look, it's the bye week, but we've had a ton of coverage. We're still going to have a ton of coverage the rest of the week. And then we get rolling in the second half of the season at LSU. So we've got a ton of stuff over there. Definitely make sure to check us out. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the podcast, and we will catch you guys in the next one.